I am 27 years old. For nearly 2 years, I have been branded a thief, not by the police or the courts, but by my own parents. They poisoned every job interview I secured. My father believed I would eventually crawl back home, trading my freedom for a meal. He had no idea my grandmother built me an escape hatch 15 years ago. The person waiting for me was not a hiring manager, but the CEO. My name is Naomi Jordan. I am 27 years old. By all traditional metrics, I should be sitting in a corner office in Philadelphia right now, reviewing audit logs or managing a portfolio for a mid-sized firm. I graduated summa cum laude with a degree in accounting and a minor in data science. My transcript is flawless. My discipline is absolute. I have never been arrested. I have never even received a speeding ticket. My background check, on paper, is as clean as a newly sanitized operating room. Yet, for the last 22 months, I have been unemployable. I am not talking about the kind of unemployable where the economy is bad or the market is saturated. I am talking about a specific, targeted radioactive decay that seems to infect every application I touch. In the world of corporate finance, trust is the only currency that actually matters. You can teach a monkey to use Excel, but you cannot teach a monkey to be ethical with access to the company vault. And in my hometown of Briar Hollow, Pennsylvania, the verdict on my ethics was delivered without a jury. I have been branded a thief. It is a silent brand. It does not show up on a standard criminal record check. If you ran my social security number, nothing would flag. But Briar Hollow is the kind of town where information travels faster than fiber optic cables, carried on the breath of church whispers and country club handshakes. Here, a reputation takes 3 generations to build and roughly 5 minutes to destroy. The people who destroyed mine were the 2 people who were supposed to protect it. My parents. I can almost hear them doing it. It is never a scream. It is never a chaotic outburst. That is not the Jordan way. We are a family of image, of stiff upper lips and pressed linens. When my father, Victor Jordan, sabotages me, he does it with the heavy, mournful sigh of a man carrying a terrible burden. He calls the places where I interview. He does not call as an enemy. He calls as a concerned father. I can picture him sitting in his mahogany-paneled study, swirling his scotch, holding the phone receiver with a practiced looseness. He would tell the hiring manager that he just wanted to give a heads up about his daughter. He would say that while I am brilliant, I have a troubling history with misappropriating funds. He would imply a pathology, a compulsion. He would frame it as a mental health issue that he is praying I overcome. "We just want you to protect your assets," he would say, his voice dripping with false altruism. "We love Naomi, but we cannot in good conscience let her near a payroll system. Not after what happened at home." It is a masterful performance. It is lethal. Who hires the accountant whose own wealthy, respected father warns them off? No one. So, instead of balancing ledgers, I balance buckets of soapy water. My current reality is the night shift at Silver Pine Senior Living. I work from 11 at night until 7 in the morning. My official title is Environmental Services Associate, which is a polite corporate euphemism for the person who scrubs the toilets and mops the vomit off the linoleum. The facility is quiet at 3 in the morning, save for the hum of the HVAC system and the occasional rhythmic beeping of a heart monitor drifting from the open doors of the residence. My hands, once used for typing rapid-fire code and navigating complex spreadsheets, are now perpetually dry and smelling of industrial-strength bleach. My skin feels like paper. My cuticles are ragged. I wear a uniform that is 2 sizes too big, a shapeless blue scrub set that renders me invisible. I prefer the invisibility, in the daylight, in this town. I feel eyes crawling over me. I feel the judgment of people who heard the story from my mother at a charity gala or from my brother at a bar. But here, under the flickering fluorescent lights of the hallway, I am just a ghost pushing a cart. I remember the first time I realized the extent of the blockade. I had applied for a junior analyst position at a local bank. The interview had been perfect. I had clicked with the manager. We had discussed recent changes in tax law. and I saw the excitement in his eyes. I was overqualified, and he knew it. He practically hired me on the spot, shaking my hand and telling me to expect the offer letter by Monday. Monday came and went. Tuesday passed in silence. On Wednesday, I received a generic email. Thank you for your interest, but we have decided to move in a different direction. I was confused. I was young enough then to still believe that meritocracy was real. I called the manager to ask for feedback. He answered, but his tone had shifted from warm to icy. We checked your references, Naomi, he had said. My professors gave me stellar recommendations, I argued. Not your professors, he cut in. We know your family. We spoke to your father. Frankly, I am disappointed you wasted my time. The line went dead. That was the moment I realized I was not just unemployed. I was being hunted. My father believes this is tough love. In his twisted narrative, he is teaching me a lesson about loyalty. He believes that if he cuts off every avenue of independence, every source of income, every scrap of dignity, I will eventually break. He thinks I will come crawling back to the family estate, kneel on the Persian rug in his office, and beg for forgiveness for a crime I never committed. He wants me to ask for a job at his company, Jordan Facility Solutions, where he can keep me under his thumb, paying me a pittance, controlling my life as if I were still 12 years old. He wants my submission. He wants to prove that without the name Jordan protecting me, I am nothing. He is wrong. I scrub the floors harder when I think about him. I focus on the repetitive motion of the mop, left to right, erasing the scuff marks. If I could scrub him out of my life that easily, I would have done it years ago, but I have something he does not account for. I have the ability to endure. I live in a studio apartment above a garage on the outskirts of town. The rent is $600 a month. I eat instant noodles and day-old bread. I count every penny. I save $5 here, $10 there. I am an accountant. After all, I know how to make the numbers work, even when they are impossibly small. I thought this was it. I thought this was going to be the next 10 years of my life, hiding in the shadows of Briar Hollow, waiting for my parents to die or for the town to forget. I thought all my doors were welded shut, but the universe has a funny way of balancing the books. Before I tell you how that balance finally came due, you need to understand the house I grew up in, and the kind of man my father really is. To understand why a father would sabotage his own daughter, you have to understand the architecture of the house I grew up in. I do not mean the physical beams and drywall of the sprawling colonial on the north side of Briar Hollow, although that was impressive enough. I mean the emotional architecture, the load-bearing walls of silence, the foundation of absolute, unquestioned authority, the meticulously painted facade that we presented to the world, layer by layer, until even we started to believe the lie. To the rest of the county, the Jordans were American royalty, or at least the closest thing you could get to it in a mid-sized Pennsylvania town. My father, Victor Jordan, was the self-made king. He founded Jordan Facility Solutions 20 years ago. On paper, it is a boring business. They provide security personnel, maintenance crews, and janitorial staff for large office complexes and municipal buildings. But in practice, my father holds the keys to half the city. He knows which councilman leaves his office late at night with someone who is not his wife. He knows which company is shredding documents before an audit. He trades in services, but his real currency is access. He is a man who believes that control is the highest form of love. If he controls you, he protects you. If you step outside his control, you are not just rebellious. You are unsafe. You are flawed. Then there was my mother, Marlene. If my father was the iron fist, she was the velvet glove that hid the bruises. She was the undisputed queen of the Briar Hollow social circuit. She sat on the board of the library, the botanical garden, and the hospital foundation. She organized the fall gala and the spring luncheon. She was a woman who had weaponized her smile. It was a terrifying thing. That smile. It was fixed, porcelain, and completely detached from her eyes. She could be telling you that your dress was hideous or that your family was going bankrupt, and that smile would never flicker in public. We were the portrait of success. We attended the First Methodist Church every Sunday, occupying the third pew on the left, looking like a catalog advertisement for moral upstandingness. My father wore Italian wool suits. My mother wore pearls that cost more than a teacher's annual salary. And then there were the children, Grant and Naomi, the heir and the spare. My brother Grant is 2 years older than me. From the moment he took his first breath, he was the crown prince. He was not particularly smart, nor was he particularly talented. But in the Jordan household, biology was destiny. He was the son. He carried the name. Therefore, the world was his to inherit. I remember when Grant was 16, he had taken my father's brand new sedan for a joyride and smashed it into a neighbor's mailbox. Tearing up 100 feet of manicured lawn, the police were called. In any other family, there would have been consequences. There would have been grounding, restitution, a lesson learned. In our house, my father met the officers in the driveway with a checkbook and a bottle of aged scotch. The police report vanished. The neighbor received a payout 3 times the value of the mailbox. And Grant? Grant was taken into the study, given a fresh drink, and told to be more careful next time because men of our stature have targets on our backs. He was taught that consequences were for other people. He was taught that money and influence were the ultimate erasers. If he failed a math test, the teacher was incompetent. If he got cut from the varsity team, the coach was biased. My parents paved the road in front of him so smoothly that he never learned how to walk on uneven ground. And then there was me. If Grant was the prince, I was the decorative vase in the hallway. I was expected to be pleasant, quiet, and presentable. I was the good daughter in the Jordan rulebook. A good daughter does not have ambitions. She has manners. She does not raise her hand in class to correct the teacher. She nods politely. She does not want to run the company. She wants to marry a man who runs a company. The dinner table was the primary stage for this dynamic. Dinner at the Jordan house was a mandatory event. 6 o'clock sharp, no excuses. We would sit at the long mahogany table, the silence broken only by the scrape of silver against china. The conversation always, inevitably, orbited around Grant. "Grant, how was practice?" my mother would ask, her eyes beaming. "Coach is an idiot," Grant would mumble, shoving a forkful of roast beef into his mouth. "He doesn't know how to utilize my offensive strategy. He is just threatened by your potential, son," my father would say, nodding sagely. "Leaders often intimidate middle management. You keep pushing. I will have a word with the athletic director at the club on Saturday." I would sit there, cutting my vegetables into tiny, precise squares. I remember one specific night when I was 15. I had just received the results of the statewide mathematics competition. I had placed first in the district. It was a massive achievement. I had beaten seniors from the prep schools. I was bursting with a quiet, desperate pride. I wanted them to see me, just for a second. "I got my test scores back today," I said during a lull in the conversation. My father did not look up from his steak. "That is nice, Naomi. Pass the salt." "I won the district," I pushed, my voice trembling slightly. "I beat everyone. The principal said I might get a scholarship to a summer program at the university." The silence that followed was not celebratory. It was heavy. It was the temperature of a room dropping 10 degrees. My father slowly placed his knife and fork down. He picked up his napkin and dabbed the corners of his mouth. Then, he turned his head and looked at me. It was a look of profound disappointment, as if I had just confessed to a crime rather than an academic victory. "Naomi," he said, his voice low and smooth, "we do not need to discuss this nonsense at the table." "It is not nonsense," I said. "It is math. It is unseemly," he corrected. "A woman who is too sharp, who is constantly trying to prove she is the smartest person in the room, ends up alone. No man wants to come home to a debate. No man wants a wife who checks his arithmetic." He took a sip of wine and delivered the line that would etch itself into my psyche. the line that defined my entire existence in that house. Grant needs achievements because he is going to build the world, my father said. You, Naomi, do not need achievements. You need to learn how to adapt. Conquering is for men. Submission is for women. You need to learn to be soft. You are becoming hard, and nobody loves a hard woman. My mother nodded in agreement, sipping her water. Your father is right, dear. You should focus more on your piano. It is much more graceful. I looked at Grant. He was smirking. He loved it when I was put back in my box. It made his box feel bigger. I learned to stop sharing. I learned to hide my grades like contraband. I took the advanced placement classes in secret, forging my father's signature on the permission slips. I studied in the library until the janitor kicked me out, telling my parents I was at cheerleading practice because that was a lie they found acceptable. I became a double agent in my own life. There was only one person who saw through the charade, one person who looked at the Jordan family portrait and saw the cracks in the varnish. My maternal grandmother, Vivian Caldwell. Vivian was everything my mother was not. She was not soft. She was not submissive. She was a force of nature wrapped in tweed and smelling of menthol cigarettes. She had inherited a small manufacturing plant from her father in the 70s, a time when women were supposed to stay in the kitchen. Instead of selling it, she ran it. She expanded it. She eventually sold it for a fortune and retired to a sprawling estate on the edge of town where she lived alone, refusing to remarry because, as she put it, I have no desire to train another puppy. My father hated her. He feared her. He could not control her money. And he could not control her tongue. He limited our visits, but he could not ban them entirely because Vivian held the purse strings to a trust fund that he was desperate to access for Grant's future. Sunday afternoons with Grandma Vivian were my oxygen. While Grant was outside shooting hoops or breaking things, I would sit in Vivian's study. It was a chaotic room, filled with books, stacks of newspapers, and the blue haze of cigarette smoke. She did not teach me how to bake. She did not teach me how to sew. "Come here, girl," she would say, patting the leather cushion of the chair next to her desk. "Look at this." She would spread out the annual reports of major corporations. She would open the business section of the Wall Street Journal. She taught me the language of money. "People lie," Vivian told me when I was 10 years old, tapping a manicured fingernail on a balance sheet. "Men lie, women lie, priests lie, but numbers? Numbers are the only honest thing in God's universe. If you know how to read them, nobody can ever fool you." She taught me what a profit and loss statement was before I knew long division. She showed me how companies hid debt in shell corporations. She showed me how to spot a CEO who was looting the coffers by looking at the ratio of administrative expenses to revenue. "Your father," she said once, blowing smoke at the ceiling, "thinks he is a titan. He is just a bully with a line of credit. He talks loud to drown out the sound of the foundation cracking." She saw me. She saw the hunger in my brain that my father tried to starve. She fed it. She gave me books on forensic accounting, on corporate law, on market theory. She treated me like an intellectual equal, not a decorative object. It was Vivian who inoculated me against my father's philosophy. When he told me to submit, she told me to calculate. When he told me to be soft, she told me to be smart. "Power that has to announce itself is not power," she told me. "It is insecurity. Remember that. Naomi, the person holding the microphone is rarely the person holding the trigger." I remember one afternoon vividly. It was late autumn. The trees outside her window were stripped bare, looking like skeletal fingers scratching the gray sky. I was 12 years old. I was crying because Grant had destroyed my science fair project, a complex model of a hydroelectric dam, and my parents had refused to punish him, telling me I shouldn't have left it where he could trip over it. Vivian let me cry. She handed me a handkerchief, crisp and smelling of lavender. She waited until the tears stopped. Then, she opened the top drawer of her heavy oak desk. She pulled out a small, velvet pouch. She did not open it. She just held it in her palm, weighing it. Naomi, she said, her voice unusually serious, her sharp blue eyes locked onto mine. You are going to have a hard life. You are smart, and you are trapped in a house that hates smart women. They are going to try to break you. They are going to try to make you small so they can feel big. She leaned forward. But you are a Caldwell, not just a Jordan. You have iron in your blood. She tapped the velvet pouch on the desk. Clink, clink. It sounded like metal. I have made a plan, she said. I am building a door for you. It is going to take time. You have to be patient. You have to play their game for a while. Nod your head. Smile. Let them think they have won. But keep your eyes open. Learn everything. What is in the bag? I asked, wiping my nose. A key, she whispered. Not for a house, not for a car. It is a key to a life where you do not have to ask anyone for permission to breathe. She put the pouch back in the drawer and locked it. One day, you will need this key. I might not be here when that day comes, but I have left it ready for you. When the water gets too high, when you think you are going to drown in that house, you remember this. Grandma has an exit strategy. I did not fully understand what she meant then. I thought maybe she meant she was leaving me some money for college. I had no idea of the scale of the machinery she was setting in motion. I had no idea that she was already weaving a safety net across state lines, hiring lawyers, and drafting documents that would lie dormant like landmines waiting for my father to step on them. I just knew that for the first time, someone was betting on me. I went back home that evening and sat at the dinner table. Grant was bragging about a girl he had kissed behind the bleachers. My mother was discussing the floral arrangements for the church bazaar. My father was lecturing on the importance of loyalty. Submission is for women, he repeated, looking at me to ensure the lesson had stuck. I looked down at my plate, at the perfectly roasted potatoes. I forced the corners of my mouth up into a small, polite smile. Yes, Father, I said softly, but under the table, my hands were fists. In my head, I was not submitting. I was counting. I was analyzing. I was waiting for the day I could turn the key. That was the life I lived, a double life, the dutiful daughter on the outside, and the cold, calculating observer on the inside. I played my part perfectly. I let them think they had crushed me. I let them think I was weak. Because Grandma Vivian had taught me the most important lesson of all. The best time to strike is when your enemy thinks you are already dead. The anchor of my ruin was forged when I was 18 years old. It was not a heavy iron chain or a prison sentence. It was a small, rectangular piece of plastic. A platinum Visa card with my name embossed on the front, right next to my father's name. It was the summer before I started my freshman year of college. I had been accepted into the accounting program at the State University. It was not the Ivy League school I had secretly dreamed of, but it was a solid program. And more importantly, it was affordable enough that my father could not hold the tuition over my head as a total embargo on my freedom. One evening, he called me into his study. The room smelled of cedar and expensive cigar smoke, the scent of a man who builds walls between himself and the world. He sat behind his desk, holding the credit card between his thumb and forefinger like a holy relic. "This is for school," he said, sliding it across the polished wood surface. "We are trusting you, Naomi. This is for emergencies, for books, for the tools you need to succeed. Do not abuse this privilege." I took the card with both hands. I felt a surge of gratitude. I thought, for a fleeting, naive moment, that this was a gesture of support. I thought he was acknowledging that I was becoming an adult, capable of managing my own affairs. I was wrong. It was not a gift. It was a trap. I treated that card with the reverence of a bomb disposal technician. I did not buy clothes. I did not buy coffee. I did not buy late-night pizzas for my dorm room. I kept a mental ledger of every cent. My purchases were boring. They were practical. They were necessary. I bought the required textbooks for my Introduction to Financial Accounting course. The bundle cost $340. I bought a subscription to a professional-grade data analysis software suite that my professor recommended for honors students. That was $215. I paid the registration fees for 2 certification exams that I wanted to take early to bolster my resume. The total came to $980.50. I still have the number memorized. $980 used strictly to build the foundation of the career my father claimed he wanted me to have. 3 weeks later, the statement arrived at the house in Briar Hollow. I was home for the weekend to do laundry and keep up appearances. The atmosphere in the house was strange, vibrating with a low-frequency tension. Dinner was quiet. My mother would not look me in the eye. Grant was eating quickly, smirking at his plate, the way he always did when he knew a show was about to start. As soon as the last dish was cleared, my father stood up. "Naomi," he said. "Study, now." He did not wait for me. He walked away, his footsteps heavy on the hardwood. When I entered the study, the bank statement was lying in the center of the desk. My father was standing by the window, looking out at the dark lawn. "I gave you a simple instruction," he said, his voice low, his back turned to me. "I told you to use the card for school. I told you to be responsible." I said, confused. "I only bought books and software." He spun around. The speed of the movement made me flinch. His face was a mask of calculated rage. He slammed his hand down on the desk, right next to the paper. "You are a thief!" he shouted. The word hung in the air, heavy and ugly. "What?" I stammered. "No, look at the charges. Dad, Pearson Education, Wiley Publishing, that is for my classes." "I see nearly $1,000 missing from my account," he roared. "I see a daughter who thinks she can dip her hand into my pocket whenever she pleases. You think because I have money, you are entitled to it? You think you can drain me dry?" "It is for school," I pleaded, my voice rising in panic. "You said I could use it for books." "That is exactly what I did. I can show you the syllabus. I can log into the bookstore account right now." I reached for the statement to point out the merchant names, to show him the logic, the proof. He snatched the paper away before I could touch it. "I do not want to see your excuses," he spat. "I do not care what the line items say. It is the principle. Naomi, you spent $1,000 without asking me first. You took it. That is stealing. But you gave me the card." "I gave you a test," he yelled, leaning over the desk, his face inches from mine. "And you failed. You proved that you have no respect for my hard work. You are greedy, just like your grandmother, always wanting more than you are worth." I looked toward the door. My mother was standing in the frame. She was twisting her pearl necklace around her fingers, her eyes wide and watery. "Mom," I said, turning to her, "tell him, you saw the book list. You know how much they cost." My mother looked at my father. Then she looked at the floor. She took a small, shaky breath. "Your father just wants you to understand value." "Naomi," she whispered. "He works so hard for us. When you take money like that, it hurts him. It feels like a betrayal." I stared at her. The room seemed to tilt. She knew. She knew exactly what those charges were. She had written the check for Grant's brand new car just a month prior. A sum 30 times what I had spent on books, but she would not speak. She would not intervene. Her survival depended on agreeing with the king, even if the king was hallucinating. "I will pay it back," I said, my voice hardening. "If you think I stole it, I will pay back every cent." "You are damn right you will," my father said, sitting down and smoothing his tie. "And until you do, the card is cut. And do not expect any tuition checks next semester. If you want to be an adult who spends money, you can be an adult who earns it." "I showed you the receipts," I said, trying one last time to appeal to reason. "It is right there. It is black and white." He looked at me with a cold, dead stare. "Naomi," he said softly, "I do not need the truth. I need you to remember who is the master of this house." That was the moment the door shut. That was the moment I realized that logic had no power in the Jordan household. He did not care about the money. $900 was a rounding error to his company. He cared that I was building a life outside of his control. and he needed to criminalize that ambition to stop it. I spent the next 2 years exhausted. I did not drop out. I refused to give him that satisfaction. I took a job at the university library, shelving books from 6 in the morning until 10. I worked weekends at a coffee shop on the edge of campus, coming home with burns on my wrists and the smell of stale espresso in my hair. I paid him back. I wrote him a check for $100 every month, but I did something else, too. Something my grandmother Vivian would have been proud of. I treated the incident like a forensic audit. I kept every receipt. I printed out the confirmation emails from the bookstore. I downloaded the syllabus from every class that listed the required materials. I took screenshots of the software pricing. I organized them into a binder. I scanned them onto a hard drive. I did not know why I was doing it at the time. It just felt necessary. It was a reflex. If they were going to call me a thief, I was going to build a defense file that proved I was innocent. I became obsessed with documentation. I started recording the dates and times of our conversations in a notebook because of the extra work hours. I had to take fewer classes per semester. It took me longer to graduate. I missed social events. I lost weight. I had dark circles under my eyes that no amount of concealer could hide. But I graduated, and I graduated with honors. I thought that once the money was repaid, the theft would be forgotten. I thought it was a temporary lesson, a cruel hazing ritual. I was wrong again. My father did not forget. He pocketed the story. He took that narrative, Naomi the thief, Naomi who cannot be trusted with money, and he filed it away in his mind like a weapon to be drawn later. He began to drop hints about it at family gatherings. "We have to be careful with the cash bar," he would joke to my uncle. "You know how Naomi gets with a credit card?" Everyone would laugh. I would freeze, my stomach turning to lead. He was planting the seeds. He was watering the lie so that when he needed to destroy my reputation later, the ground would be ready. But the true horror of his calculation did not hit me until the summer after graduation. I was back at the house for a brief period before moving out for good. My father was out playing golf, and my mother was at a charity luncheon. The house was empty. I went into his study to look for a stamp. I opened the top drawer of his desk, rummaging through the clutter. Underneath a stack of business cards, I found a manila folder. It did not have a label. I opened it. Inside was the original bank statement from 3 years ago, the one he had slammed on the desk. My breath caught in my throat. He had kept it, but he had not just kept it. He had altered it, next to the charge for the university bookstore. In his sharp, angular handwriting, he had written, "Unauthorized withdrawal, personal luxury items." Next to the charge for the data analysis software, he had written, "Online gambling debt." Next to the certification fees, he had written, "Transfer to unknown account." He had gone through the entire statement and annotated it, reimagining every legitimate educational expense as a vice or a crime. He was not just remembering it wrong. He was actively rewriting the history of the document. He was preparing a dossier. Why would a father do that? Why would he fabricate evidence against his own teenage daughter? I stood there in the silent study, the paper trembling in my hands. The realization washed over me like ice water. He knew I would try to leave one day. He knew I was smart. He knew I would try to build a career, and he was preparing the ammunition to stop me. If I ever became too successful, if I ever tried to outshine Grant, or if I ever tried to expose the family secrets, he could pull out this file. He could show it to an employer or a partner. "Look," he would say, "she has been stealing since she was a teenager. Here are my notes from the time. We tried to help her, but she is pathological." It was a contingency plan. I was not a daughter to him. I was a liability that needed to be managed. I pulled out my phone. My hands were shaking, but I forced them to be steady. I took a picture of the statement. I took a picture of his handwriting. I took a picture of the lies he had written in blue ink. Then I put the folder back exactly where I found it. I walked out of the study, and for the first time, I did not feel fear. I felt a cold, hard clarity. My father thought he was the only one keeping records. He thought he was the only one preparing for war. He did not know that he had just given the auditor the one thing she needed most: evidence of fraud. I went to my room and backed up the photos to 3 different cloud servers. I added them to my own file, the one containing the receipts, the syllabus, the proof of my innocence. He wanted a story about a thief? Fine, I would give him one, but he was not going to like the ending. Because in the story he was writing, he was the judge, but in the story, I was documenting, he was the defendant, and the trial was just beginning. I held my diploma like a shield. It was printed on heavy, cream-colored cardstock, the university seal embossed in gold foil at the bottom. To anyone else, it was just a piece of paper. A receipt for 4 years of tuition and late-night study sessions. But to me, it was a declaration of independence. It was proof that I had navigated the minefield of my father's financial sabotage and come out the other side intact. I believed, with a tragic kind of optimism, that the hard part was over. I had the credentials, I had the grades, I had the drive. I moved into a cheap month-to-month sublet on the edge of town, using the last of my savings to pay the deposit. I bought a second-hand suit that I had tailored to look sharp. I polished my shoes until I could see my own desperate reflection in the leather. Then I began the assault. I applied everywhere. I did not just aim for the top-tier firms in Philadelphia or New York. I cast a wide net across the entire county and the neighboring state. I sent resumes to regional accounting firms, to the corporate offices of local banks, to insurance underwriters, and even to manufacturing companies looking for junior auditors. The response rate was initially thrilling. My resume was undeniable. I had a 3.9 GPA. I had internship experience, albeit limited due to my library job. I had certifications. The phone rang. Emails requesting availability flooded my inbox. I remember my first interview vividly. It was with a mid-sized accounting firm in the next town over. The partners were 2 older men who reminded me of my grandfather, stern but fair. We spent 45 minutes discussing tax code changes and the nuances of forensic auditing. I saw them nod. I saw them smile. At the end of the meeting, one of them shook my hand firmly and said they were looking for someone exactly like me. He told me to expect a call by Friday to finalize the offer details. I walked out of that building floating on air. I calculated my potential salary, $45,000, maybe $50. It was enough to disappear, enough to never ask Victor Jordan for a dime again. Friday came. The phone did not ring. Monday morning. I received an email. It was short. Dear Ms. Jordan, while your qualifications are impressive, we have received information that leads us to believe you would not be a cultural fit for our firm. We wish you the best. I stared at the screen. Cultural fit? That was the standard rejection code for, we just didn't like you. I brushed it off. Maybe I had been too eager. Maybe I had talked too fast. But then it happened again. I interviewed at a community bank. The branch manager was enthusiastic. She introduced me to the tellers. She showed me where my desk would be. 2 days later, a rejection letter arrived. Position filled internally. I interviewed at an insurance agency. The interview went overtime because we were having such a good conversation about risk assessment models. The next day, application declined. It became a sickening pattern. The initial excitement, the warm reception, the confident handshake, and then the sudden, unexplained freeze. It was as if I were walking through a series of open doors that slammed shut the moment I turned my back. I started to panic. My savings were dwindling. I was down to $300. I was eating rice and beans. I was waking up at 3 a.m, sweating, wondering if I had some fatal flaw I couldn't see. Was there something on my teeth? Did I smell? Was there a typo in my resume that I had missed 1,000 times? The answer came from a woman named Mrs. Galloway. She was the human resources director for a logistics company about 20 miles south of Briar Hollow. She was a kind woman with soft eyes and a grandmotherly demeanor. The interview had been perfect. I knew I had nailed it. I knew I was the best candidate they had seen in months. At the end of the interview, she closed my folder. She looked at me for a long time, tapping her pen against the desk. She looked conflicted. She looked at the door, ensuring it was closed. And then she leaned forward, lowering her voice. "Naomi," she said, "I am not supposed to do this. Corporate policy is very strict about liability. If I tell you this, I could lose my job." My stomach dropped. "What is it?" "You are a bright young woman," she said, "and frankly, we need someone with your skills, but I cannot hire you." "Why?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Is it my background check? I have never been arrested." "It is not the police," she said. She sighed, a heavy, sad sound. "It is the reference check, specifically, the character reference." "I provided references from my professors," I said. "We did not call your professors," she said gently. "In a town this size, when we see the last name Jordan, we call the patriarch. It is a courtesy, a sign of respect." The room seemed to spin. "You called my father?" I said. It was not a question. "He spoke very highly of your intelligence," Mrs. Galloway said, choosing her words carefully. "But he felt obligated to warn us. He told us about the incident with the family funds. He mentioned a gambling problem. He said you have a history of financial instability and ethical lapses." I felt the blood drain from my face. Gambling problem. That was the note he had written on the bank statement next to the software purchase. He had turned his handwritten lie into a professional advisory warning. "He told you I am a thief," I said flatly. Mrs. Galloway looked down at her hands. "He said he loves you, but he could not in good conscience let a company handle client money when he knows the risks. He said he is trying to get you help." She looked up at me, her eyes full of pity. "Naomi, no one in this county is going to hire an accountant whose own father flags them as a security risk. You need to go home and fix this. You need to talk to your family." I did not drive back to my apartment. I drove straight to the house on the hill. I parked my rusted compact car next to my father's gleaming sedan. I did not knock. I used the key I still had. The key they hadn't bothered to take back because they knew I would return eventually. My father was in the sunroom, reading a trade magazine. My mother was arranging hydrangeas in a vase. It was a scene of domestic tranquility that made me want to scream. They looked up as I stormed in. My mother flinched, dropping a stem. My father just turned a page, unbothered. "I was wondering when you would stop by," he said calmly. "You told them I was a gambler," I said, my voice shaking with a mixture of rage and exhaustion. "You told the logistics company. You told the bank. You told everyone." He closed the magazine and set it on the side table. He removed his reading glasses. "I told them the truth," he said. "You told them lies," I shouted. "You invented a story about me stealing from you, and now you are selling it to anyone who will listen. Why? Why are you doing this to me? I repaid you. I did everything you asked." "You did not do what I asked," he said. Standing up, he towered over me, radiating that cold, suffocating authority. "I asked for loyalty. I asked for you to understand your place. Instead, you ran off. You tried to build a life without my permission. You thought a piece of paper from a university made you independent." He walked over to the window, looking out at his empire. "I could not let those companies hire a thief," he said, his back to me. "Imagine the liability. Imagine if you took their money the way you took mine. It is my duty as a responsible citizen to warn them." "I never took your money," I screamed. "I bought books." "Details." He waved his hand dismissively. "The narrative is what matters, Naomi. And the narrative is that you are unstable. You are a risk." "You are destroying my life," I said. "I have $300 to my name. If I do not get a job, I will be evicted." He turned around and smiled. It was not a warm smile. It was the smile of a chess player who just trapped the queen. "Exactly," he said. He walked over to the desk in the corner of the room and picked up a document. "I am not a cruel man, Naomi," he said. "I do not want you to starve. I am your father. I want to help you." He held out the paper. This is an employment contract. I stared at it. What? Jordan Facility Solutions has an opening, he said. We need a junior assistant in the payroll department. Essentially, an apprentice. You will handle data entry. You will file reports. You will report directly to the comptroller, who reports to me. You want me to work for you, I said, understanding dawning on me. I am offering you a lifeline, he corrected. The salary is $22,000 a year. That is below minimum wage for a salaried position, I said automatically. That is poverty wages. It is an apprenticeship, he said smoothly. You have a damaged reputation, remember? No one else will hire you. I am taking a risk by bringing you on. You have to earn back the trust. You work for me, under my roof, under my supervision. You live here again. You save your rent money. And in exchange, I stop making calls. I stop warning people. And if I refuse? Then good luck, he said, shrugging. The phone is right there. I have a long list of contacts in the state capitol. I can broaden the warning radius if I need to. I looked at my mother. She had moved to stand beside him. She reached out and touched my arm. Naomi, please, she pleaded. Just come home. Your father is trying to protect you from yourself. The world is too hard for a girl on her own. Just be a good daughter. Just be discreet. If you just lower your head and do as he says, everything will be peaceful again. We can be a family. Peaceful, I repeated. You mean silent. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. It was a text from Grant. He wasn't even in the room. He was probably upstairs gaming, or out spending the money I was accused of stealing. The text read, Heard you crashed and burned. Welcome to the real world, little sister. Dad says you're coming to work for us. Try not to steal the staplers. LOL. I looked at the text. I looked at my father's smug face. I looked at my mother's pathetic, pleading eyes. I realized then that this was not about teaching me a lesson. This was not about parenting. This was a hostage negotiation. He was using my livelihood as leverage to force me back into the box he had built for me. He wanted me close so he could control every dollar I earned, every person I met, every thought I had. He wanted to break my spirit until I was just another accessory to his ego. Like the cars and the house, if I signed that paper, I would never leave. I would be trapped in that office for the rest of my life, making $22,000 a year, grateful for the scraps he threw me. I would die in this house. I looked at the contract. No, I said. My father's smile vanished. Excuse me? I said no, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I will not work for you. I will not live here, and I will not sign that. You have no choice, he sneered. You are unemployable. You are broke. You will be on the street in a month. Then I will be on the street, I said. I would rather sleep under a bridge than sleep under your roof. You are making a mistake, he warned, his voice dropping to a growl. If you walk out that door, Naomi, do not think you can come back when you are hungry. If you leave with nothing. I will make sure the story follows you. I will make sure you never get a corporate job in this state. You have already done that, I said. You have taken everything you can take, but you cannot take my refusal. That belongs to me. I turned around. Naomi, my mother cried out. Don't be stubborn. Apologize to your father. I did not look back. I walked out of the sunroom, through the foyer that was always kept perfectly clean by people like me, and out the front door. I got into my car. My hands were shaking so hard, I had to use both of them to turn the key in the ignition. I drove away from the house, watching it shrink in the rear-view mirror until it was gone. I was terrified. I had no job. I had no prospects. I had a powerful enemy who had just promised to hunt me down professionally. But as I drove down the winding road, past the manicured lawns of the neighbors who believed I was a thief, I felt something else. I felt the air rushing through the open window. It tasted like gasoline and rain, but to me, it tasted like freedom. I was not going back. I would scrub toilets. I would wait tables. I would dig ditches if I had to, but I would never, ever let Victor Jordan own me again. My transition from the world of theoretical ledgers to the world of industrial hygiene was abrupt. I did not have the luxury of mourning my career. My bank account was hovering in the double digits, and hunger is a very pragmatic motivator. I applied to Silver Pine Senior Living because they had a sign out front that said, "Immediate hires night shift." They did not ask for a LinkedIn profile. They did not ask for a cover letter detailing my 5-year plan. They asked if I could lift 50 pounds and if I had a pulse. The interview took 5 minutes. I sat in a cramped office that smelled of stale coffee and toner, across from a woman named Rosa Delaney. Rosa was the night shift manager. She was a woman carved out of granite, with gray hair pulled back into a tight bun, and eyes that had seen everything the human body can expel and lost the capacity to be surprised by it. She flipped through my application. She paused at the education section. She saw the university degree. She saw the Latin honors. She looked up at me, her expression unreadable. "You are overqualified," she said flatly. "I usually get college dropouts, or people trying to dodge a parole officer. You are a summa cum laude." "I need a job," I said. "That is all." I braced myself for the questions. I expected her to ask why a Jordan was applying to scrub floors. I expected her to ask if I was researching a book, or if this was some kind of twisted social experiment. Rosa did not ask. She tossed the application onto a stack of files. "I need people who show up on time," Rosa said. "I need people who do the work without complaining. I do not need your life story, and I do not need drama. Can you clean a bathroom without vomiting?" "Yes," I said. "Can you operate a commercial washer?" "I can learn." $11 an hour, she said. "Shift starts at 11 at night, ends at 7 in the morning. Wear comfortable shoes. The floors are hard." That was it. No judgment. No phone calls to my father. Rosa Delaney was the first person in months who treated me like a unit of labor rather than a scandal. So, I became a ghost in the halls of Silver Pine. The work was grueling in a way that spreadsheets never were. It was physical. It was repetitive. My night began when the residents were asleep. I pushed a heavy gray cart laden with cleaning supplies down the long, dim corridors. I mopped the vinyl floors until they shone under the safety lights. I collected the laundry bags from outside the rooms, heavy with soiled sheets and towels. The laundry room became my sanctuary. It was in the basement, a windowless concrete box filled with the roar of massive tumbling machines. It was hot and humid, smelling of detergent and bleach. I learned the rhythm of the wash cycles. I learned how to fold a fitted sheet so it looked like a perfect square. I learned that physical exhaustion is a kind of anesthesia. When your back aches and your hands are raw from chemicals, you do not have the energy to think about the fact that your friends from college are posting photos of their new corner offices on social media. I was good at it. I applied my accountant's brain to the logistics of cleaning. I optimized my route to save time. I organized the supply closet. Rosa noticed. She never praised me. She was not the praising type, but she stopped hovering. She trusted me to get the job done, but even in the basement, I could not escape the feeling of being marked. The day staff would sometimes see me leaving as they were arriving. They would whisper. I saw the recognition in their eyes. "Is that the Jordan girl? The thief? Look at her now." I kept my head down. I wore my uniform like armor. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself I was building grit. Then came the second Saturday of October. I arrived for my shift to find the parking lot overflowing with luxury sedans and SUVs. The main entrance was draped in gold and maroon banners. A valet stand had been set up under the portico. I found Rosa in the break room. She looked stressed. "Fundraiser tonight," she grunted, pouring coffee. "The annual autumn gala. They are using the main atrium and the garden courtyard. We have to stay out of sight until midnight. Then we have a massive cleanup job. Stay in the west wing or the basement. Do not spook the donors." I nodded. Grabbing my cart, I knew about the gala. My mother had been talking about it for months. She was on the organizing committee. It was her pet project. I intended to bury myself in the laundry room for the entire night. I had no desire to see the world I had been exiled from. But at 1 in the morning, The service elevator in the West Wing jammed. I had a cart full of fresh linens that needed to go to the second floor for the morning change. I had to take the long way. I had to cross the edge of the main atrium. I thought the party would be winding down. I thought the guests would be gone. I was wrong. The atrium was still buzzing. A jazz band was playing softly in the corner. Men in tuxedos and women in evening gowns were mingling, holding crystal flutes of champagne. The air smelled of expensive perfume and catered hors d'oeuvres. I tried to be invisible. I pushed my cart close to the wall, keeping my eyes on the floor. I was wearing my shapeless blue scrubs, my hair pulled back in a messy knot, my shoes scuffed and sensible. Well, if it isn't the help, the voice cut through the ambient noise like a whip. I froze. I knew that voice. It was a voice that had taunted me since childhood. I looked up. Grant was standing 10 feet away. He looked handsome in a bespoke tuxedo, his hair perfectly styled. He was holding a drink, his face flushed with alcohol and arrogance. He wasn't alone. He was with a group of his friends, sons of other wealthy families in town. He gestured to me with his glass, treating me like an exhibit in a zoo. "I always said Naomi had a hidden talent," Grant announced, loud enough for the nearby clusters of guests to hear. "I just didn't know it was for sanitation. Look at her. She is much better at wiping floors than she ever was at finance." His friends laughed. It was a cruel, braying sound. I gripped the handle of the laundry cart until my knuckles turned white. I wanted to run. I wanted to scream. But I stood my ground. I would not give him the satisfaction of seeing me flinch. "Hello, Grant," I said, my voice steady. "Excuse me. I have work to do." "Work?" he sneered, stepping into my path. "Is that what you call it?" "I call it consequences. You steal from the family. You end up taking out the trash. It is poetic. Really." The commotion drew attention. People turned. The conversations died down. And then, the crowd parted. My father walked through. Victor Jordan looked every inch the patriarch. He was holding a glass of scotch. My mother was on his arm, looking radiant and terrified. When she saw me, her hand flew to her mouth. She looked at my scrubs, then at the guests, and I saw the shame burn in her eyes. Not shame for how they treated me, but shame that I existed in her beautiful picture. My father did not look away. He walked right up to me. He looked at the laundry cart. He looked at the ID badge clipped to my chest. Then he looked me in the eye. He smiled. It was a small, tight smile of victory. "You see?" he said, addressing the room but looking only at me. His voice was calm, authoritative. "We tried to raise her with values. We tried to give her everything. But some people have to learn the hard way. Some people have to hit the bottom before they understand the value of $1. He raised his glass slightly. "It is good to see you working. Naomi," he said. "It is honest labor. It suits you. Finally, you have learned your position." The silence in the atrium was deafening. Every eye was on me. The wealthy elite of Briar Hollow, people I had grown up with, people whose houses I had visited, were looking at me with a mixture of pity and disgust. They believed him. They saw the uniform and the cart, and they saw confirmation of his story. The thief, the failure. I looked at my father. I looked at the man who had annotated my bank statement with lies. I looked at the man who was using my humiliation as a toast at a party. I could have cried. A year ago, I would have cried. I could have shouted the truth. I could have screamed about the $980. But as I stood there, smelling of bleach amidst the scent of roses, a voice echoed in my head. It was the raspy, cigarette-tinged voice of Vivian Caldwell. Power that has to announce itself is not power. It is insecurity. When the time comes, you will know. This was not the time. This was his stage, his audience, his game. If I fought him now, I would look like the hysterical, unstable daughter he claimed I was. So I did nothing. I did not lower my eyes. I did not apologize. I simply nodded. Once, slowly. "Enjoy your evening, Mr. Jordan," I said, I pushed the cart past him. I walked through the crowd, head high, the wheels of the cart rattling on the marble floor. I felt their eyes on my back, burning like lasers. I felt the heat of my brother's laughter, but I kept walking until the double doors of the service corridor swung shut behind me, cutting off the music and the noise. I did not cry until I got to the elevator, and even then, it was not a sob of despair. It was a single, hot tear of rage. Enjoy it while you can. I thought, enjoy your scotch and your lies, because I am not learning my place. I am learning your weakness. I finished my shift. I scrubbed every toilet in the East Wing. I folded 300 towels. I worked with a cold, mechanical fury. When the sun came up at 7, I punched out. I walked to my car, my legs aching, my soul feeling bruised. I drove back to my garage apartment. The morning light felt harsh. I climbed the stairs and collapsed onto the floor. I felt hollowed out. I felt like maybe he was right. Maybe this was it. Maybe I was just a girl who cleaned up after other people. I needed to feel connected to something real. I needed to remember who I was before the lies started. I crawled over to the corner of the room where I kept my plastic storage bin. It was filled with the debris of my former life. Old textbooks, a dried corsage from prom, a photo of me and Grandma Vivian sitting on her porch. I dug through the box, looking for the photo. My hand brushed against something small and hard at the bottom. I pulled it out. It was the flip phone, the burner phone Vivian had given me. I hadn't seen it in years. I had thrown it in the box after the funeral and forgotten about it. It was covered in a fine layer of dust. I held it in my hand. It felt like a relic from another civilization. I remembered the secret texts we used to send. I remembered her voice. Vivian's promise came back to me. She'd built me a way out. I looked at the charger port. It was an old standard, but I thought I might have a cable that fit. I rummaged through my desk drawer and found a tangled wire that looked right. I plugged it into the wall. I did not expect it to work. The battery had been dead for 4 years. I sat there, watching it, for 5 minutes. Nothing happened. Then, a small red light on the front cover blinked. I held my breath. Another 5 minutes passed. The screen flickered. A grainy startup animation played. The phone buzzed in my hand. It searched for a signal. 1 bar, 2 bars. The screen lit up with the date and time. And then, an icon appeared in the center of the display. 1 new voicemail. My heart stopped. Who would call this phone? Only Vivian had the number, and Vivian was dead. I looked at the date of the voicemail. It was not from today. It was from 2 days after Vivian had passed away. I had turned the phone off the day she died, too grief-stricken to look at it. I had missed this call by 4 years. My hands were trembling so hard I could barely press the button to access the mailbox. I put the phone to my ear. The robotic voice announced the date and time. Then, a beep. "Miss Jordan?" a woman's voice said. It was professional, crisp, but laced with a hint of confusion. "This is Ellen from the offices of Sterling and Finch. We are trying to reach you regarding the execution of the final clause in the Vivian Caldwell estate. We have sent letters to your home address, but they have been returned as refused by addressee. Please contact us immediately. Your grandmother left specific instructions that activate upon your 25th birthday, or in the event of significant distress. We have reason to believe the conditions have been met." The message ended. I sat there on the floor of my apartment. The phone pressed to my ear, the silence of the room roaring around me. Refused by addressee, my father. He had intercepted the mail. He had seen letters from a law firm addressed to me, and he had sent them back. He had blocked the communication. Vivian had left me something. She had left me a way out, and for 4 years, it had been sitting in a voicemail inbox on a dead phone, waiting for me to find it. I looked at the phone. I looked at the time. It was 8 in the morning on a Sunday. The law firm would be closed, but I did not care. I wrote down the number. I wrote it down 3 times to make sure I didn't get it wrong. The shame of the night before, the sting of Grant's laughter, the weight of my father's victory. It all evaporated. In its place, a cold, sharp realization took hold. My grandmother had not just left me a key, she had left me a weapon, and my father had tried to bury it. He thought the game was over. He thought he had won. He had no idea that the ghost he tried to silence had just picked up the phone. I waited until exactly 9 o'clock on Monday morning. I had not slept. I had spent the previous 24 hours staring at the burner phone, willing the battery to hold its charge, willing the signal to stay strong. I sat in my car in the parking lot of the public library, stealing their Wi-Fi signal just in case I needed to look something up quickly. I dialed the number for Sterling and Finch. My hands were clammy. A receptionist answered on the second ring. Her voice was polished, indifferent. I asked to speak to Ellen, the woman who had left the voicemail 4 years ago. There was a long pause. Then the receptionist told me that Ellen had retired 2 years prior. My heart sank. I felt the thread slipping through my fingers. I insisted on speaking to whoever was handling the Vivian Caldwell estate. I gave them my name. I gave them my social security number. I gave them the case file number referenced in the voicemail. I was put on hold. The hold music was a tinny, distorted classical piece that grated on my nerves. I waited for 10 minutes, then 20. I watched people walking into the library, oblivious to the fact that my entire future was hanging on a telephone wire. Finally, a man came on the line. He introduced himself as Mr. Henderson. He sounded tired and annoyed. "Ms. Jordan," he said, "I have the file in front of me, but I'm confused as to why you are calling now. The file has been marked as inactive." "Inactive?" I asked, gripping the steering wheel. "Why? I never received the correspondence. I only just got the message." "That is not what our records show," Mr. Henderson said. "We sent the standard notification packet via certified mail 3 times. All 3 were returned. Then, we received a call from the family representative stating that you were aware of the bequest, but had no interest in pursuing it at this time due to personal issues. The representative instructed us to hold the assets in the blind trust until further notice." "Who was the representative?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. I felt a cold, metallic taste in my mouth. "Let me see." Papers shuffled on the other end. "A Mr. Victor Jordan. He identified himself as your father." I closed my eyes. "Of course." "Mr. Henderson," I said, keeping my voice dangerously level. "I did not refuse anything. My father intercepted my mail. He lied to you. I am very interested. I want to know what is in that trust." "I see," the lawyer said. His tone shifted from annoyance to caution. "Well, that complicates matters. If the beneficiary was obstructed—" "Look, Ms. Jordan, I cannot discuss the details over the phone. The trust is sealed under a strict confidentiality clause drafted by Mrs. Caldwell. It is a break glass in case of emergency structure. If you want to access it, or even view the contents, you need to present yourself in person at our partner office. We need to verify your identity physically. Where is the partner office?" "We have a liaison in Philadelphia," he said, "but the primary holding entity is based in Denver, Colorado. That is where the assets are domiciled." Denver again. The city seemed to be pulling at me like a magnet. "I will get there," I said. "Do not let anyone else touch that file. Do not talk to my father. We are legally bound to the beneficiary, Ms. Jordan," he said. "If you say you are contesting the previous instruction, we will freeze any external inquiries immediately." I hung up. I sat there, breathing hard. My father had not just slandered me. He had actively stolen an inheritance. He had blocked a lifeline my grandmother threw me from the grave. I tried to search for the trust online using the library's internet. I searched for Vivian Caldwell Trust, Caldwell Estate Denver, Sterling and Finch Holdings. I found nothing but a few opaque corporate registrations. It was a ghost ship, a shell company wrapped in a non-disclosure agreement. I hit a wall. I needed to get to Philadelphia or Denver, but I had no money for a plane ticket, and my car would never survive a cross-country drive. I was trapped by the very poverty my father had engineered, and then, as if on cue, the trap snapped shut. My personal cell phone rang. It was not a blocked number. It was Dad. I stared at the screen. He had not called me in 6 months. He only communicated through lawyers or through the humiliating grapevine of the town. I answered. I needed to know what game he was playing. Naomi, his voice came through the speaker. It was warm. It was the voice he used when he was closing a deal with a difficult client. It was terrifying. I was just thinking about you. Were you? I asked. Was the toast at the gala not enough? He chuckled, a low, rich sound. Oh, come now. You know how these things are. I had to maintain appearances. Grant was out of line, and I had to diffuse the tension. It was just theater. Sweetheart. Sweetheart. The word made my skin crawl. What do you want? Dad? I want to make a truce, he said. Your mother and I, we hate seeing you like this. Scrubbing floors, living in a garage. It is beneath you. It is beneath us. I am fine, I lied. You are not fine, he countered gently. I know you are struggling, and I have been thinking, maybe I was too hard on you. Maybe the lesson has been learned. I want to offer you a fresh start. A fresh start? Come home for dinner on Sunday, he said. Let's talk. I am willing to wipe the slate clean. I will make a few calls. I can get the thief talk to stop. I can get you a real job, not an apprenticeship, a management position at the company, $60,000 a year, benefits, your own apartment in the city. We can fix this. Naomi, we can be a family again. I held the phone away from my ear, staring at it in disbelief. 60,000? A management position? Last week he was offering me poverty wages and threatening to destroy me. Why the sudden pivot? Why the sudden generosity? It did not make sense. Victor Jordan never gave anything away unless he was buying something more valuable. I will think about it, I said. Do not think too long, he said, his voice tightening just a fraction. Opportunities like this have an expiration date. Sunday, 6 o'clock. Don't be late. He hung up. I sat there, the unease settling in my gut like a stone. He was up to something. He was desperate. You do not offer a $60,000 salary to a person you despise unless you need them for something specific. I went to work that night with my senses on high alert. It was a Tuesday. The facility was quiet. I was assigned to the maintenance level, a labyrinth of pipes and ductwork that ran beneath the main residential floors. It was where the boilers and the massive HVAC units lived. It was loud, hot, and empty. I was mopping the concrete floor near the utility room that housed the main circuit breakers. The room shared a wall with the private executive conference room that the facility management used. It was a quirk of the building's design that I had discovered months ago. The ventilation shaft that ran from the conference room passed directly through the utility room. If the vents were open, you could hear everything said in that conference room as if you were sitting at the table. Usually, the room was empty at 2 a.m, but tonight, I saw light spilling from the crack under the door, and I heard voices. One voice was unfamiliar, rough, agitated. The other voice was smooth, baritone, and unmistakable. Victor Jordan. My father was here, in the middle of the night, at the nursing home where I worked. I turned off my floor buffer. I stood perfectly still in the shadows, pressing myself against the cold cinder block wall near the vent. Liquidity is drying up. Victor, the rough voice said. The expansion into the tri-state area overextended us. The banks are looking at the debt-to-equity ratio, and they are getting nervous. If we don't secure the bridge loan by the end of the quarter, the payroll accounts are going to bounce. I know the numbers. Frank, my father snapped, you do not need to lecture me on my own ledger. Then you know we need a guarantor, Frank said. Someone with a clean balance sheet to co-sign the new liability structure. We cannot use Grant. His credit is shot after that sports car fiasco. We cannot use Marlene. She is already leveraged on the house. I have a candidate, my father said. My heart hammered against my ribs. Who? Frank asked. You need someone with a perfect credit score and zero debt. Someone who looks safe to the underwriters but is stupid enough to sign a guarantee for a company that is bleeding cash. My daughter, Victor said. The one you told everyone is a thief? Frank laughed. Good luck getting a bank to trust her. That is the beauty of it, my father said. I could hear the smile in his voice. The thief story is just local gossip. It is social engineering. It keeps her unemployable here, keeps her desperate. But financially? Her record is spotless. I checked it myself last week. She has zero debt. She paid off everything. Her credit score is nearly 800. To a computer in New York, she looks like a perfect angel. I clapped a hand over my mouth to stifle a gasp. So what is the plan? Frank asked. I offered her a job today, Victor explained. A management role, good salary. She will come back. She is starving. Once she is on the payroll, I will make her a corporate officer, a silent partner. I will put the new debt instruments in her name. I will frame it as an executive investment opportunity, or simply bury the indemnity clauses in her employment contract. She trusts the signature line if she thinks it is for her benefit. And when the loan defaults? Frank asked. Because it might default. Victor, then the bank goes after her assets, not mine, my father said coldly. She declares bankruptcy. We restructure. The company survives. She takes the hit. She is young. She can rebuild in 7 years. It is a small sacrifice for the family legacy. The room spun. It wasn't just punishment. It wasn't just about control or the $900. It was a long con. The theft accusation was step 1. Isolate me. Destroy my ability to earn money independently. And make me desperate. Step 2 was the rescue. Bring me back when I'm broken. Give me a title, and then use my clean financial identity as a shield to absorb his toxic debt. He was going to turn me into a human shield for his bankruptcy. He was going to enslave me to millions of dollars of debt that I would never be able to repay. He was going to harvest my future to save his present. I felt a wave of nausea, followed immediately by a surge of adrenaline. I needed proof. I fished my phone out of my pocket. My hands were shaking, but I forced them to be steady. I opened the voice memo app. I held the phone up to the vent. Are you sure she will sign? Frank asked. She will sign, my father said. She is broken. Frank, I broke her myself. She will sign anything just to hear me say I am proud of her. That is the thing about daughters. They never stop wanting their father's approval, even when you are holding a knife to their throat. I hit the red button. The recording bar started to move. I waited for one more sentence. Draft the employment contract with the hidden guarantor clause, Victor said. I will have her sign it on Sunday after dessert. I stopped the recording. I had it. I backed away from the vent, moving as silently as a cat. I grabbed my cart and pushed it down the hall, my heart pounding so loud I thought they must be able to hear it through the walls. I did not finish my shift. I parked the cart in the supply closet. I walked out the back exit, into the cool night air. I got into my car and locked the doors. I played back the recording. The audio was slightly muffled, but the words were clear. She is broken. I broke her myself. She will sign anything. I sat there in the dark, shivering. I could not go to Sunday dinner. I could not stay in Briar Hollow. If I stayed, he would find a way to force me. He would use guilt. He would use force. He would use the law. He was a cornered animal, and he was looking for a sacrifice. I had to vanish, but I could not just run away. I had to run to something. I thought of the voicemail. I thought of the law firm in Denver, Astor Lane Capital, the name from the email that hadn't arrived yet in my memory. But the destination was clear. The trust was in Denver. The money was in Denver. The only person who had ever tried to protect me, Vivian, had built a fortress for me in the Rocky Mountains. I drove to my apartment. I packed everything I owned into 2 suitcases. I left the furniture. I left the mattress. I left the uniform. I opened my laptop. I did not search for jobs in Pennsylvania. I searched for jobs in Colorado. I searched for jobs in Wyoming. I searched for jobs in Utah. Any place where the name Victor Jordan meant nothing. I found the listing for Astor Lane Capital Partners in Denver. They were looking for compliance analysts. It was a long shot. It was a high-level firm. But I applied anyway. I attached my resume. I attached my transcript. And then, in the cover letter section, I wrote a single sentence that was reckless and unprofessional, but I felt compelled to write it. I am the granddaughter of Vivian Caldwell, and I am looking for the key she left me. I hit send. I applied to 10 other places in Denver. Coffee shops, bookstores, warehouses. I did not sleep that night. I sat by the window, watching the street, waiting for my father's car to pull up. I expected him to know. I expected him to sense that his prey had slipped the trap. He thought he was the hunter. He thought I was the wounded deer. He was wrong. I was not a deer. I was a wolf that had chewed off its own leg to get out of the snare, and now I was limping toward the high ground. I was going to Denver, and I was going to find out what was in that trust, even if I had to tear the city apart brick by brick. The silence of my inbox was a heavy, suffocating thing. I spent 2 days in a cheap motel on the outskirts of Denver, the kind of place where the carpet smells of stale tobacco and the neon sign outside buzzes like a dying insect. I had sent out 30 applications in 48 hours. I applied for data entry. I applied for bookkeeping. I applied for jobs I was vastly overqualified for and jobs I was barely qualified for. I sat on the edge of the lumpy mattress, refreshing my email on my phone every 30 seconds. Rejection. Rejection. Automated response. We are not hiring at this time. My bank account was bleeding out. I had sold my laptop charger and my good winter coat at a pawn shop in Pennsylvania just to afford the bus ticket and the first 2 nights at this motel. I had $112 left. If I did not get an interview by Friday, I would be sleeping in the bus terminal. Then, at 4 p.m. on Tuesday, the notification chimed. It was not a rejection. Subject: Interview request. CEO direct. Astor Lane Capital Partners. I froze. Astor Lane Capital. The firm connected to the law office. The firm I had mentioned Vivian Caldwell to in a moment of desperate intuition. I opened the email. My breath hitched in my throat. The email opened with a formality. Dear Ms. Jordan, we have received your application for the Senior Compliance Analyst position. While this role typically requires a more extensive vetting process through human resources, your file has been flagged for immediate review by the Executive Office. Mr. Lila Kessler, the Chief Executive Officer, requests a personal interview with you tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. Please arrive 15 minutes early for security clearance. We have been waiting for this file for a long time. I read the last sentence 3 times. We have been waiting for this file for a long time. That was not standard corporate language. That was personal. That was a signal. Corporations do not wait for junior analysts. CEOs do not interview 27-year-old applicants with a gap in their resume and a tarnished reputation, unless the key my grandmother spoke of was not an object, but a connection. I felt a surge of hope so violent it almost made me dizzy. I jumped up and paced the small room. I checked my suit. It was the same second-hand blazer I had worn to the disastrous interviews in Briar Hollow, but I had steamed it in the motel bathroom shower. It would have to do. I needed to be perfect. I needed to be sharp. I spent the next 6 hours rehearsing. I stood in front of the cracked mirror, practicing my answers. Why is there a gap in your employment? I was caring for a sick relative. Why did you leave your last job? I was seeking better opportunities in a dynamic market. I was building a new mask, but in my excitement, in the adrenaline rush of finally seeing a crack of light in the darkness, I made a fatal error. I let my guard down. I wanted to believe I was free. I wanted to believe that simply being 2,000 miles away from Victor Jordan meant I was safe. I wanted to prove, just for a second, that I was still alive, that I was still Naomi. I opened my Instagram. I had blocked my parents and Grant years ago. My account was private. I had only a few dozen followers, friends from college I hadn't spoken to in ages, a few cousins who never talked to my father. I took a picture of the snowy mountains visible from the motel parking lot. It was a blurry, artistic shot of the peaks against a purple sunset. I posted it to my story with 2 words: New Beginnings. I stared at it for a minute, feeling a warm glow of defiance. Look at me. I thought, I am not scrubbing floors. I am in the mountains. I am moving on. I put the phone down and went to sleep, clutching the burner phone in my hand like a talisman. I woke up at 6 in the morning. My stomach was in knots. I dressed in the dark, putting on my makeup with the precision of a soldier applying camouflage. I drank the terrible motel coffee. I felt ready. I turned on my smartphone to check the map for the bus route to the financial district. My notifications were blown up. A text from an unknown number. Nice view. Colorado looks cold this time of year. I went cold. The number area code was Pennsylvania. Then, another text. This one was saved in my contacts. A number I should have deleted but never did. Grant's name lit up my screen. Did you really think a private account would stop me? I have had a burner following you since college. Sis, Dad knows. My phone rang. The screen lit up with the name, Father. I stared at it. The vibrating phone danced across the cheap laminate table, making a buzzing sound that sounded like a drill. He knew. He knew I was in Denver. He knew I was making a move. I could have ignored it. I should have ignored it. But the fear he had instilled in me was deep. It was a reflex, and part of me needed to know how much he knew. I needed to know if he knew about Astor Lane. I picked up. "Hello, Naomi?" he said. His voice was not angry. It was not the voice of the man who had screamed at me in the study. It was the voice of the man who had calmly explained how he would turn me into a debt slave. It was the voice of a man who believes he has already won. "I am surprised," he said pleasantly. "Denver, that is a long way to go for a ski trip, especially when you are unemployed." "I am not on a ski trip," I said, my voice tight. "I am living my life. Leave me alone." "You are not living," he corrected. "You are running, and you are running on fumes. I checked your credit card activity before you cut it up. You are broke. Naomi, how are you paying for that motel? Or are you sleeping on the street yet?" "I have an interview," I blurted out. I regretted it immediately. "An interview," he repeated. The line went silent for a moment. I could hear the click of a keyboard in the background. "In Denver, let me guess, you are looking at the financial district. There are only a few firms there that hire people with your specific background. You cannot stop me," I said. "I am 2,000 miles away. Your whispers do not reach this far." "My whispers travel at the speed of light. Sweetheart," he said, "telephones work in Colorado just as well as they work in Pennsylvania. I have friends in Denver. I have business partners who owe me favors. I can make a few calls this morning. I can tell them about the theft. I can tell them about the instability. I can tell them about the mental health break you took." "You are lying," I said, my hand gripping the phone so hard it hurt. "You don't know where I'm going." "It does not matter," he said. "I will call every major firm in the city. I will blast your name out to every HR director on LinkedIn within a 50-mile radius of that mountain range. By the time you walk into that lobby, they will already have a file on you. They will look at you and see exactly what I want them to see." "Why?" I whispered. "Why can't you just let me go?" "Because you belong here," he said, his voice dropping an octave. "You belong to the family. I gave you an option. Naomi, I offered you a job. I offered you a way to be useful. You chose to run. Now, I am going to close every door in front of you until the only one left open is the one that leads back to my house. I have a recording," I said. It was a bluff, or at least, using it now was a bluff. "I heard you in the maintenance room. I know about the loan. I know you want to use me as a guarantor." He laughed. It was a dry, dismissive sound. "A recording?" he mocked. "Illegal surveillance? Inadmissible in court? And who would believe you? The thief? The girl who ran away? Go ahead. Play it for them. You will just look like a paranoid conspiracy theorist. It fits perfectly with the mental instability narrative I have already prepared." He paused. "I am going to make one call. Naomi, just one. And whatever hope you have this morning will evaporate. Save yourself the embarrassment. Pack your bags. I will wire you money for a plane ticket home. This is your last chance." I hung up. I threw the phone onto the bed. I felt like I couldn't breathe. He was right. He could call. He could poison the water before I even took a sip. I looked at the clock. 8:15. I had to go. I grabbed my bag. I grabbed the folder with my resume and the transcripts I had saved. I grabbed the burner phone. I ran to the bus stop. The morning air in Denver was thin and biting cold. It hurt my lungs. My cheap blazer provided no warmth. I stood there, shivering, watching the gray clouds swirl over the skyscrapers in the distance. The bus ride took 30 minutes. It felt like 30 years. Every time the bus stopped, I expected police to get on. I expected my father to be standing on the corner. I was paranoid. I was breaking down. I got off at the Financial District stop. Astor Lane Capital was located in a tower of blue glass and steel that seemed to pierce the sky. It looked impenetrable. It looked like a fortress for gods, not a place for a girl who had spent the last 6 months plunging toilets. My smartphone buzzed again. I looked down. My brother, Grant. Good luck at the interview. Dad just got off the phone with their head of security. He handled it. Better turn around now before they escort you out. My knees almost buckled. He handled it. He knew. He had guessed the firm. Or maybe he had used a connection I didn't know about. Astor Lane was a big player. Maybe my father's company did business with one of their subsidiaries. Or maybe he had just called the main switchboard and used his terrifying charm to get through to someone who mattered. I stood on the sidewalk, the wind whipping my hair across my face. People in expensive coats brushed past me, talking into headsets, looking important. I felt small. I felt dirty. If I walked in there, and they had already received the call, it would be the gala all over again. The humiliation, the security guards, the pitying looks. There she is, the thief. I wanted to turn around. I wanted to run back to the bus stop, go back to the motel, and hide under the covers until the money ran out. But then I touched the pocket of my blazer. I felt the hard plastic of the burner phone. I am building a door for you. Vivian had said that. If my father had called, then the door was already locked. But if Vivian had built it, maybe, just maybe, she had changed the locks. I looked at the revolving doors of the tower. I looked at the reflection of the mountains in the glass. No, I whispered to the cold air. I was not going back. I was not signing a loan guarantee. I was not going to be his victim anymore. If this was the end, if this was the moment I was finally crushed, then I was going to be crushed in the lobby of a billion-dollar company, wearing a suit, looking them in the eye. I would not be crushed in a garage in Pennsylvania. If this was the last door, I was going to knock on it with my own hand. I straightened my blazer. I wiped the wind tears from my eyes. I lifted my chin. I walked toward the revolving doors. I pushed against the heavy glass. I stepped into the lobby. The air inside was warm and smelled of white tea and money. The security desk was a massive slab of marble. I walked up to the guard. He was a large man with a serious face. He looked down at me. "Name?" he asked. "Naomi Jordan," I said, my voice shaking only a little. "I have a 9 o'clock appointment with Mr. Kessler." I waited for him to frown. I waited for him to look at a list and say, "I'm sorry. You have been banned." I waited for the hand on my shoulder to escort me out. The guard typed something into his computer. He paused. He looked at the screen for a long second. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. Here it comes. The rejection. The guard looked up. "Mr. Kessler is expecting you on the 42nd floor," he said. He handed me a badge. "Elevator Bank B. Have a good morning, Ms. Jordan." I took the badge. My hand was trembling. He hadn't stopped me. My father's call. Either he hadn't made it in time, or something else was happening. I walked to the elevator. I pressed the button for the 42nd floor as the doors closed, shutting out the world below. I took a deep breath. I was in. The wolf was inside the fortress. Now, I just had to survive the meeting with the king. The elevator doors slid open with a soft, pneumatic hiss, revealing a reception area that looked less like an office and more like a sanctuary. The floors were polished travertine, and the walls were adorned with modern art that I knew, even with my limited knowledge, cost more than my parents' entire estate. I stepped out. clutching my battered leather portfolio. I felt like an intruder. I felt like the dust of the motel and the grime of the bus station were clinging to me, visible against the pristine white surroundings. A young woman at the desk stood up immediately. "Ms. Jordan?" she asked. "Mr. Kessler is waiting for you. Go right on back. The double doors at the end of the hall." She did not ask for my ID. She did not ask me to sign a visitor log. She gestured down the corridor as if I owned the place. I walked down the hallway. It was long and silent. My heartbeat was a drum in my ears. I reached the double doors made of frosted glass. I raised my hand to knock, but before I could make contact, a voice called out from inside. "Come in, Naomi." I pushed the doors open. The office was vast. The view behind the desk was a panoramic sweep of the Rocky Mountains, jagged and snow-capped against the morning sun. But I did not look at the mountains. I looked at the woman standing in the center of the room. Lila Kessler was not what I expected. I expected a shark in a suit. I expected someone cold and transactional. Lila was in her early 50s, wearing a cashmere sweater and dark trousers. She had silver hair cut in a sharp bob and eyes that were warm, intelligent, and startlingly familiar in their intensity. She did not offer a handshake. She walked toward me and stopped a foot away, studying my face with a kind of reverence. "You look just like her," Lila said softly. "Around the eyes. You have Vivian's eyes." I blinked, taken aback. "You knew my grandmother?" "Knew her?" Lila laughed, a low, genuine sound. "Naomi, your grandmother is the reason I am standing in this office. She is the reason this building exists." She gestured to a seating area by the window. "Please, sit down. We have a lot to cover. And none of it is a standard interview." I sat on the edge of a leather sofa. "Ms. Kessler, I don't understand. I applied for a compliance job. I have a gap in my resume. My references are complicated. My father said he called you." "We will get to Victor in a moment," Lila said, her voice hardening slightly at the mention of his name. "But first, we have business to conclude. Business that has been pending for 15 years. She walked over to a painting on the wall, swung it aside to reveal a hidden safe, and spun the dial. I watched, mesmerized. This felt like a movie. It felt unreal. She reached inside and pulled out a thick, yellowed envelope. It was sealed with red wax, the old-fashioned kind. She placed it on the coffee table between us, on the front of the envelope, in handwriting that made my breath catch in my throat. Spiky, elegant, and unapologetic were the words, "Only open when Naomi Jordan comes to Asterlane for a job." I stared at the script. I reached out and traced the ink with a trembling finger. It was Vivian's hand. I could smell the faint scent of her menthol cigarettes and lavender perfume ghosting off the paper. "She gave this to me 3 weeks before she died," Lila said quietly. "She made me swear an oath. She said, 'One day, my granddaughter is going to run. She is going to run until she runs out of road. When she does, she will come here, and when she walks through that door, you give her this.'" "May I?" I whispered. Lila nodded. "It belongs to you." I broke the wax seal. My hands were shaking so badly I almost tore the paper. Inside were 3 things. The first was a letter on personal stationery. The second was a thick legal document bound in blue paper. The third was a small black notebook. I picked up the letter first. "My dearest Naomi, if you are reading this, then the water finally got too high. I am sorry I could not be there to pull you out myself. I knew Victor would try to clip your wings. He is a small man who fears big things, and you, my darling, were always destined to be big. I could not leave you money directly. He would have found a way to take it, or freeze it, or use it to manipulate you. So, I made an investment. Years ago, I met a brilliant young woman named Lila who had a big idea and no capital. I gave her the money she needed, but I did not take the profit. I put the equity into a blind trust. You are not here to ask for a job. Naomi, you are here to claim your company. Use the key, unlock the door, and never let that man make you feel small again. Love, Grandma. I put the letter down, tears blurring my vision. I looked at the blue legal document. I opened it to the first page. Deed of Trust. The Phoenix Trust. Beneficiary, Naomi Jordan. Assets. 6% of founding Class A shares in Astor Lane Capital Partners. I looked up at Lila. 6%? Vivian was our first angel investor, Lila explained. She put in $500,000 when we were operating out of a garage. That was 15 years ago. Today, Astor Lane manages assets in the billions. Your 6% stake is not just a number on a page. Naomi, it makes you one of the largest individual shareholders in this firm. I tried to do the math in my head. 6% of a billion-dollar firm. That was tens of millions of dollars. I looked down at my cheap, secondhand blazer. I looked at my scuffed shoes. I had walked in here hoping for a salary that would let me rent a one-bedroom apartment. I was sitting on a fortune that could buy the entire apartment complex. I own this? I asked, my voice barely audible. You have owned it since you were 12, Lila said. It has been sitting in the trust, accruing dividends, protected by layers of corporate secrecy that even your father could not penetrate. Vivian was very specific. The trust could only be unlocked by you, physically, in this building. Why didn't she tell me? Because she knew you needed to be ready, Lila said. She knew that if you got this money too young, Victor would have coerced you into signing it over. She needed you to be hungry. She needed you to be a survivor. She wanted you to come here not as a child, but as a warrior. I reached for the third item, the black notebook. I slid the folder open and scanned the first page. It was a log, a detailed, meticulous log of dates and events. July 14th, 2018. Victor screams at Naomi about the math competition, tells her to submit. I stayed silent to keep access to the girl. August 2nd, 2020. Victor fabricates the credit card issue. I saw the receipts in Naomi's room. He is gaslighting her. I have made copies of the real bank statements and stored them in box 4. December 2022. Victor creates false narrative about theft to neighbors. He is preparing to isolate her. I flipped through the pages. It was all there. Every abuse, every lie, every moment I thought I was alone. She had been watching. She had been documenting. And tucked into the back pocket of the notebook were photocopies. Copies of the emails I had saved. Copies of the receipts for the textbooks. Copies of the original, unaltered bank statement. She came to me once a month to update the file, Lila said. She treated it like a case study. She said, "My son-in-law is a criminal in a custom suit. I am building the prosecution's case for my granddaughter." I closed the notebook. I felt a weight lift off my chest, a weight I had been carrying for years. I was not crazy. I was not the villain. I had a witness. "So," I said, wiping my eyes, "what happens now?" Lila leaned back against her desk. Her expression shifted. The warmth remained, but a sharp, executive edge appeared. "Now," she said, "we discuss your employment, and we discuss your father." "He called you," I said. "He told me he was going to destroy me." "He did call," Lila confirmed. "At 8:30 this morning, he spoke to my executive assistant. He was quite passionate. He informed us that you are a thief, a liar, and a liability. He strongly advised us against hiring you." I flinched. "I am sorry. He is relentless." "Do not be sorry," Lila said. She smiled, and it was a dangerous smile. "Be strategic. Do you know what happens when a third party knowingly provides false information to damage the reputation of a majority shareholder?" I looked at her. The gears in my accounting brain began to turn. "It is slander," I said. "It is tortious interference." "It is more than that," Lila said. "Since you are a partial owner of this firm, his attempt to sabotage your employment is technically an attack on the company's leadership structure. And because he did it on a recorded line," she tapped a sleek tablet on her desk, "we record all incoming calls to the executive suite for quality and compliance purposes," she said. We have him on tape. We have him admitting that he is trying to block you. We have him making specific, verifiable lies about your financial history. A history that our own background check proved was impeccable. By the way, she picked up a folder from her desk. My legal team has already reviewed the transcript of his call. Their consensus is that Mr. Jordan has just handed us a loaded gun. He thinks I am just an applicant, I said. He thinks he is crushing a bug. Exactly, Lila said. He does not know he is punching a tank. She walked around the desk and stood in front of me. Naomi, I cannot give you the job you applied for. My stomach dropped for a split second before she continued. A senior compliance analyst reports to a manager, given your equity stake. That would be inappropriate. However, the trust stipulates that you must be an active employee to access the full operational voting rights immediately. So, I am offering you a different role. She handed me a thick, cream-colored envelope. Special advisor to the CEO regarding internal audit and risk, she said. You will report only to me. Your salary will be $150,000 a year. Separate from your dividends, your job will be to find the rot in systems, and I think you have a lot of experience spotting rot. I took the envelope, $150,000, plus the millions in the trust. There is one condition, Lila said. Anything. Next week, she said. Astor Lane is hosting the National Housing and Development Charity Gala. It is here in Denver. It is a massive event. We invite partners from all over the country. I nodded. We received a request for a ticket 2 weeks ago from a small firm in Pennsylvania, Lila said. Jordan Facility Solutions. Apparently, the owner is desperate to secure a contract with our property management division. He wants to supply security for our western expansion. I went cold. He is coming here? He is, Lila said. He thinks he is coming to charm a new client. He thinks he is coming to save his dying company. She leaned in close. I want you to be there. Naomi, I want you to stand next to me. I want you to wear a dress that costs more than his car. And when he walks up to shake my hand, I want you to be the one who introduces him to the board of directors. He will cause a scene, I said. He will scream. He will try to humiliate me. Let him, Lila said calmly. That is the trap Vivian set. If he attacks you in private, it is your word against his. But if he attacks you in public, in a room full of bankers and lawyers, while you are standing there as a major shareholder of the company he is trying to woo, he commits professional suicide. She looked at the wax seal on the table. He thinks he drove you out, she said. He doesn't know he drove you to the bank. I looked at the mountains outside. I thought about the maintenance room in the nursing home. I thought about the thief brand he had burned onto me. I stood up. I smoothed my secondhand blazer. I felt taller. I felt the iron in my blood that Vivian had promised was there. I will take the job, I said. And the gala? Lila asked. I will be there, I said. And I will make sure he sees me. Lila smiled. She reached out and shook my hand. Her grip was firm, like an anchor. Welcome home. Naomi, she said. I walked out of that office a different person. I walked past the security guard, past the revolving doors, and out into the cold Denver air. The wind didn't hurt anymore. I took the burner phone out of my pocket. I looked at it one last time. Thank you, Grandma, I whispered. Then I walked toward the nearest boutique. I had a dress to buy. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't going to check the price tag. The week leading up to the gala was a blur of high-stakes choreography. It felt less like planning a party and more like preparing for a tactical strike. I was installed in a temporary office next to Lila's suite, a room with glass walls that offered no place to hide, a physical manifestation of my new reality. Lila spent the first morning explaining the battlefield terrain. She projected a schematic of the company's expansion plans onto the wall. Your father isn't just fishing for a contract, Naomi, she said, tapping a region on the map marked in red. He is drowning. He is trying to secure the exclusive security and maintenance rights for our new tech campus in Boulder. It is a $20 million contract over 5 years. If he gets it, he refinances his debt and survives. If he doesn't, Jordan Facility Solutions is insolvent within 90 days. I stared at the numbers. So he is desperate. He is cornered, Lila corrected. And that makes him dangerous. He bought a platinum table at the gala, $25,000 he likely borrowed, just to get FaceTime with me. He thinks he can charm his way into a handshake deal before the formal bidding process starts. I looked down at my hands. They were manicured now. The bleach burns healed, but I could still feel the phantom grit of the nursing home. I don't want a scene, Lila, I said quietly. I don't want to destroy him just for the sake of watching him burn. That feels petty. That feels like something he would do. Lila sat on the edge of my desk. Her expression was serious. This is not revenge, Naomi, she said firmly. Revenge is emotional. Revenge is messy. This is a correction. Your father has spent years monetizing a lie about you. He traded on your reputation to cover his own incompetence. All we are doing is returning the truth to its rightful owner. If the truth destroys him, that is his fault, not yours. She was right, but the thought still made my stomach turn. I wasn't a fighter by nature. I was an auditor. I liked rules. I liked order. Okay, I said. So what is the plan? The legal team is preparing a dossier, Lila said. We have the trust documents proving your 6% ownership. We have the background checks. We have the affidavits from the HR directors he called, stating he gave a negative reference based on personal malice. If he tries to claim you are an imposter or a fraud, we can bury him in paper within 30 seconds. But papers don't stop a man like him, I said, remembering the way he dominated a room, the way he could shout down reality itself. He will yell. He will lie. He will make a scene before anyone can read a legal brief. That is where you come in, Lila said, and that is where the strategy shifts. She walked to the window, looking out at the city. The instinct is to shut him down immediately, she said, to cut his mic, to have security drag him out the moment he raises his voice, but we are not going to do that. I looked at her, confused. We're not? No, Lila turned back, her eyes gleaming. We are going to let him talk. He is persuasive, I warned. He can make black look like white. He is persuasive when he is in control, Lila countered. But he is not coming here to control. He is coming here to impress. He wants to look like the benevolent patriarch of a successful business. If we interrupt him, we look defensive. But if we let him speak, if we let him dig his own grave in front of 500 witnesses, he will fall into it all by himself. She stepped closer. The most effective way to destroy a liar is not to shout liar. It is to let them tell a lie so big, so obvious, and so ugly that the audience rejects it instinctively. We need him to be Victor. We need him to be the bully, and you need to be the rock he breaks himself against. I spent the next 3 days assembling my own arsenal. I went back to the digital files I had guarded for years. I printed the bank statement with his handwritten notes accusing me of gambling. I printed the receipt for $980 in textbooks. I printed the email from the university confirming my honor status. Then, I took out my phone. I found the recording from the maintenance room. She is broken. I broke her myself. She will sign anything. I transferred the file to a secure USB drive. I gave a copy to Lila's head of security. If he claims he is trying to protect you, Lila said, we have this in our back pocket, but we only use it if he forces our hand. The goal is not to humiliate him with private recordings. The goal is to let him reveal his character in the present moment. The preparation went beyond documents. It was physical. It was psychological. Lila hired a stylist, not to make me look like a fashion model, but to make me look formidable. We chose a dress of midnight blue silk. It was structured, high-necked, and tailored to within an inch of its life. It was not a dress for a party girl. It was a dress for a queen regent. No jewelry, the stylist said, except for a watch. You need to look serious. You need to look like you own the building, not like you are attending the prom. I practiced my stance in the mirror. Shoulders back, chin up, hands clasped loosely in front of me. No fidgeting, no looking at the floor. "He will try to trigger you," Lila warned me during our final briefing. "He knows your buttons because he installed them. He will use your childhood nicknames. He will bring up your mother. He will try to make you feel 12 years old again. Your job is to stay 27. Your job is to be the senior compliance advisor and the shareholder. You are not his daughter in that room. You are his boss." The day of the gala arrived with a gray, steely sky. The event was held in the grand ballroom of the Astor Lane Tower. By 6 o'clock, the room was filling with the titans of industry. There were senators, tech moguls, and real estate tycoons. The air buzzed with the hum of billion-dollar conversations. I was backstage in the green room, watching the feed on a monitor. I saw them arrive. My father walked in like he was claiming territory. He wore a tuxedo that was slightly too shiny. My mother was on his arm, her smile fixed and brittle, her eyes darting around the room as if looking for an exit. Grant was trailing behind them, looking bored and checking his phone, likely texting friends about how boring these old people parties were. They moved through the crowd. I watched my father work the room. He clapped men on the back. He laughed too loudly at jokes that weren't funny. He was handing out business cards with a desperate velocity. He had no idea I was in the building, as far as he knew. I was still shivering in a motel room, terrified of his threats. "He looks confident," I said to Lila, who was standing beside me adjusting her cuffs. "He looks hungry," Lila observed. "Look at his hands. He's clenching them every time someone turns away. He is terrified." She turned to me. "Are you ready?" I took a breath. My heart was hammering, but it was a different rhythm than before. It wasn't the erratic flutter of panic. It was the steady, heavy thud of a war drum. "I am ready," I said. "Remember," Lila said, "you don't have to say much. Silence is louder than shouting. Let him fill the silence with his noise." She walked out onto the stage. I stayed in the wings, hidden by the heavy velvet curtains. I could see the podium. I could see the sea of round tables bathed in warm amber light. I saw my father's table. Table 4, right near the front. He had paid for proximity. Lila took the microphone. The room went quiet. "Welcome," she said, her voice projecting effortlessly. "Tonight is about foundations. It is about building structures that last. Astor Lane Capital has always believed that integrity is the only currency that does not devalue." She spoke for 10 minutes about the charity, about housing projects, about the future. My father was nodding enthusiastically from his table, performing the role of the engaged philanthropist. Then, Lila shifted gears. "Tonight is also a special occasion for our firm," she said. "For 15 years, Astor Lane has held a secret. We have been guarding a legacy left to us by our first angel investor, a woman of extraordinary vision named Vivian Caldwell." I saw my father freeze. His wineglass stopped halfway to his mouth. My mother's head snapped up. "Vivian believed in the long game," Lila continued. "She believed that truth, like a good investment, compounds over time. And tonight, I am honored to introduce the person who has come to claim that legacy, a woman who owns a founding stake in this company, and who has recently joined us to lead our internal audit and risk division." Lila looked directly at Table 4. "Please welcome Ms. Naomi Jordan." The applause was polite, confused. Most people didn't know the name. But at Table 4, there was no applause. My father dropped his glass. It hit the table, shattering. Red wine spilled across the white tablecloth like a gunshot wound. Grant looked up from his phone, his jaw hanging open. My mother looked like she was going to faint. I stepped out from behind the curtain. I walked to the center of the stage. The spotlights hit me, blindingly bright. I could feel the heat on my face. I stopped next to Lila. I looked out into the darkness, letting my eyes adjust until I found him. He was staring at me. He looked as if he was seeing a ghost. He stood up. It wasn't a polite standing ovation. It was a jagged, aggressive movement. He knocked his chair backward. "This is a joke," he said. It was loud enough to be heard in the sudden silence of the room. Lila stepped back, leaving me at the podium. This was the plan. I was the shield. I leaned into the microphone. "Good evening," I said. My voice was calm. It sounded deeper than usual. "Thank you, Lila. It is an honor to finally take my place here." "No!" My father was moving. He was walking toward the stage, his face turning a mottled shade of crimson. The security guards started to move toward him, but Lila held up a hand. Stopping them, let him talk. "You are a liar," Victor shouted. He was at the edge of the stage now, looking up at me. The guests were murmuring, a ripple of shock moving through the room. "What is this? What kind of scam is this?" "Hello, Father," I said. "It is not a scam. It is a shareholders' meeting." "Shareholder?" He laughed, a frantic, high-pitched sound. He turned to the crowd, spreading his arms. "I apologize. Everyone, I apologize for this interruption. This is my daughter. She is not well." He pointed a shaking finger at me. "She has had a mental breakdown. She ran away from home last week. She has a history of delusions. She is a thief." The word hung in the air. Thief. I didn't flinch. I didn't interrupt. I let the word settle over the room like a foul smell. "She stole from her own family," Victor yelled, emboldened by my silence. He thought he was winning. He thought he was controlling the narrative. "She stole thousands of dollars. She has a gambling addiction. I have been trying to get her help, but she refuses. She is a manipulator." He turned back to Lila. "Lila, you have been duped. This girl is a con artist. She scrubbed toilets at a nursing home last week. That is her level. She is not an executive. She is a charity case that I've been supporting for years." I watched the faces of the people at the nearby tables. They weren't nodding in agreement. They were recoiling. They were looking at a man in a tuxedo screaming at a young woman on a stage. They saw the vein bulging in his neck. They saw the wine stain on his shirt. He was showing them exactly who he was. "Are you finished?" I asked. He stopped, chest heaving. "Get down here. Naomi, get off that stage before I have you arrested for fraud. You are embarrassing the family." "I am not embarrassed," I said. I reached into my portfolio, which I had placed on the podium. I pulled out a single piece of paper. It was the copy of the bank statement. "You called me a thief," I said, speaking clearly into the microphone. "You told the banks, the insurance companies, and the logistics firms in Pennsylvania that I stole money. You told them I was a gambler." I held up the paper. "This is the bank statement from 2018. The total expenditure was $980. It was spent on textbooks, certification fees, and software for my degree." I looked at the crowd. "My father annotated this document," I said. He wrote "gambling debt" next to a purchase from Wiley Publishing. He wrote "unauthorized luxury" next to a tuition fee. "That is a forgery!" Victor screamed. "She forged it!" "And this," I continued, ignoring him, pulling out the blue-bound document, "is the deed of trust established by Vivian Caldwell 15 years ago. It names me as the owner of 6% of this company. My grandmother knew you, Father. She knew you would try to rewrite history, so she kept the receipts." "Vivian was a senile old bat," Victor roared. "She hated me. She poisoned you against me." The room gasped. Attacking a grandmother, especially the revered angel investor of the hosting firm, was a fatal error. "She didn't poison me," I said. "She protected me." I looked down at him. He looked small now. The stage gave me height, but the truth gave me stature. "I am not here to argue with you," I said. "I am here to inform you. I am the Senior Compliance Advisor for Asterlane Capital. My job is to assess risk. And right now, I am looking at a man who is soliciting a $20 million contract from a company he is actively trying to defraud." "I am not defrauding anyone," he sputtered. "You called our CEO this morning," I said. "You tried to use your influence to block a shareholder from entering the building. You slandered a corporate officer, and you did it while hiding the fact that your own company is insolvent. Insolvent? He went pale. That is a lie. We are liquid. We are robust. I have the recording, I said softly. I didn't play it. I didn't have to. The threat of it was enough. I heard you in the maintenance room. Dad, I heard you tell Frank that you needed a guarantor. I heard you say you were going to trick me into signing the debt because I was broken, because I would sign anything for your approval. I saw the fight go out of him. His shoulders slumped, the bluster evaporated, replaced by a naked, terrifying realization. He looked at the crowd. Hundreds of faces stared back at him with cold, judgment-filled eyes. He looked at his potential investors, his partners, his rivals. They were all witnessing his unmasking. Naomi, he whispered. It was a plea now. Naomi, don't do this. I am your father. I looked at him. I felt a pang of sadness, but it was distant, like looking at an old photograph of a house that had burned down. I know, I said, and that is why I am not having you arrested for the fraud you planned. I am simply declining your bid. I looked up at the room. Asterlane Capital will not be partnering with Jordan Facility Solutions, I announced. We require our partners to meet a standard of ethical compliance that Mr. Jordan has demonstrated he cannot meet. I turned to Lila. She nodded. Security, Lila said calmly into her mic. Please escort Mr. Jordan and his party from the premises. 2 large guards stepped forward. They didn't grab him. They didn't have to. They just stood there, waiting. Victor looked at me one last time. There was no love in his eyes. There was only hate. But for the first time in my life, his hate didn't scare me. It couldn't touch me. I was behind bulletproof glass. He turned and walked away. He didn't look at my mother. He didn't look at Grant. He walked alone, his shiny tuxedo looking cheap under the lights. A king with no kingdom. Marching toward the exit, I watched him go. I put my hand on the cool wood of the podium. My heart was slowing down. I reached into my pocket and touched the letter from Vivian. You owe no one your obedience. I looked out at the ballroom. The silence was broken by a single person clapping, then another, then the whole room was applauding. They weren't clapping for a show. They were clapping for the truth. I stood there, breathing in the air of the ballroom. It smelled of victory, but more importantly, it smelled of peace. The spotlights were blinding, creating a wall of white heat between me and the audience, but I could still see him. Victor Jordan stood at the edge of the stage, his face contorted into a mask of absolute disbelief. To him, I was an aberration, a glitch in his carefully constructed reality. In his mind, I was supposed to be wearing oversized scrubs and smelling of bleach in a basement in Pennsylvania, not standing in a couture silk gown on a stage in Denver. Flanked by the CEO of a billion-dollar firm, he did not see a shareholder. He saw a rebellious child who had broken out of her room. "Security!" Victor bellowed, his voice cracking with the strain. He pointed a shaking finger at me. "Remove this person. She is crashing this event. She is a thief." He looked around wildly, trying to make eye contact with the guards, trying to summon the authority he wielded so effortlessly in Briar Hollow. "Get her off the stage," he screamed. "She is mentally unstable. She is a danger to herself." The ballroom was dead silent. 1,000 people, holding crystal glasses and expensive hors d'oeuvres, watched in frozen fascination. They were witnessing a man unravel. 2 large security guards stepped out from the shadows of the wings. Victor nodded triumphantly, thinking they were coming for me. "That is right," he shouted. "Take her out the back. Do not let her cause a scene." But the guards did not walk toward me. They walked past me and stood at the edge of the stage, forming a human barrier between Victor and the podium. They crossed their arms, their faces stone. Victor stopped. He looked at the guards, then up at me, then at Lila. "What is this?" he spat. "Lila, you are making a mistake. You do not know this girl. She is a manipulator. She has fooled you." Lila stepped forward. She did not raise her voice. She did not need to. The microphone picked up every nuance of her icy calm. "Mr. Jordan," Lila said, "I know exactly who she is, and more importantly, the legal department of Astor Lane Capital knows exactly who she is." "She is a nobody!" Victor yelled, losing control now, his hands balling into fists. "She is my daughter, and she is a thief." "She is the owner of 6% of this company," Lila announced. Her words rang out like a gavel strike. "She is a founding shareholder, and as of this morning, she is the special advisor to the CEO regarding internal audit. You are currently screaming at your superior, Mr. Jordan." The gasp from the audience was audible. It rippled through the room like a physical wave. Victor staggered back half a step, as if he had been physically struck. 6%? That is impossible. That is millions. She has nothing. She borrows money for textbooks. He spun around, looking for his allies. He found my mother and Grant standing near table 4. They looked like statues. My mother was clutching her pearl necklace so hard I thought the string would snap. Her face was ashen. Grant was looking at the floor, refusing to meet his father's eyes. "Marlene!" Victor shouted, his voice desperate. Tell them about the credit card. Tell them about the gambling." My mother did not move. She did not speak. For the first time in 30 years, she did not rush to smooth over his cracks. She saw the cameras flashing. She saw the judgment in the eyes of the women she desperately wanted to impress. And she chose self-preservation. "Grant," Victor pleaded. "Back me up. Tell them who she is." Grant took a small step backward, distancing himself from the blast zone. Victor was alone, and the realization broke something inside him. He turned back to the stage, his eyes wild. "You are all liars," he screamed. "This is a setup, a fraud. You are trying to humiliate me to drive down my bid. I will sue you. I will sue this entire company." Lila looked at me. She gave an almost imperceptible nod. Now, I stepped up to the microphone. "We do not need to sue anyone, Father," I said. "We just need to listen." Lila signaled to the sound technician in the booth. A sudden hush fell over the room as the speakers crackled to life. It was the recording from that morning, the call Victor had made to Lila's office. The audio was crystal clear. "This is Victor Jordan. I am calling to warn you about an applicant named Naomi Jordan. She is my daughter, but I must be honest. She is a thief. She embezzled thousands from the family. She has severe psychological issues. If you hire her, you are inviting a cancer into your firm. I am telling you this as a father. Destroy her application, for her own good." The recording ended. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. It was the sound of a man's character being stripped bare in front of the people he wanted to impress the most. Victor stood there, his mouth opening and closing. No sound coming out. He looked like a fish on a dock. I walked around the podium. I stood at the very edge of the stage, looking down at him. I held up the manila folder I had carried with me. "You called me a thief," I said, my voice steady, carrying to the back of the room without a tremor. "You told the world I stole money, but we both know the truth." I pulled out the bank statement, the one enlarged and projected onto the massive screen behind me by the tech team. The handwriting, Victor's sharp, angry scrawl, was visible to everyone. $980, I said. "That is what I spent. On books? On education? You wrote gambling debt next to a physics textbook. You wrote luxury next to a certification exam." I let the paper fall from my hand. It fluttered down and landed at his feet. "I did not steal from you," I said. "You stole my reputation. You stole my ability to work. You stole 2 years of my life because you were terrified that I would succeed without you." "I did it for you," Victor roared, his face turning a dangerous shade of purple. He lunged against the invisible barrier of the stage. "I did it to teach you." "Teach me what?" I asked cold. "To be a criminal? Because that is what you were planning to make me." "To be a daughter!" he screamed. The words tore out of his throat, raw and ugly. I did it so you would learn to submit. Girls are supposed to listen. You do not walk away from me. You do not get to be bigger than the family. The echo of his words bounced off the walls. I did it so you would learn to submit. He had said it. He had confessed. He hadn't confessed to a crime. He had confessed to a philosophy. And in a room full of modern CEOs, of powerful women, of men who had daughters they adored, that confession was a death sentence. The temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. I saw looks of pure disgust directed at table 4. Grant, sensing the total collapse, rushed forward. He grabbed his father's arm. "Dad," Grant hissed, his voice audible through the stage monitors. "Stop. We have to go. Now." "Get off me!" Victor snarled. He shoved Grant. It wasn't a gentle push. It was a violent, two-handed shove that sent his golden boy, the son he claimed to cherish, stumbling backward into a waiter carrying a tray of champagne. Glass shattered. Grant fell to the floor, wet and humiliated. The mask was gone. The benevolent patriarch was gone. All that was left was a bully in a ruined tuxedo. Victor looked at Grant on the floor. He looked at me on the stage. He looked at the hundreds of phones that were now raised, recording every second of his meltdown. I stepped back to the microphone for the last time. "I did not come here tonight to take revenge," I said. "I came here to set a boundary." I looked directly into his eyes. "I will not be coming home for Sunday dinner. I will not be signing your loan guarantee. I will not be the collateral for your bad debts. I am closing the account. Father, permanently." I turned to Lila. "I believe we are finished here." Lila nodded to the guards. "Please remove Mr. Jordan," she said. This time, the guards moved. They took Victor by the arms. He didn't fight. The fight had left him. He looked deflated, a balloon that had been popped. He let them drag him backward, his heels dragging on the carpet, as they hauled him through the double doors at the back of the ballroom. He didn't look back. He didn't look at my mother, who was now weeping silently into her napkin. He didn't look at Grant, who was picking himself up out of a puddle of champagne. He just vanished into the dark hallway, leaving only the stain of his presence behind. The aftermath was swift and brutal in the business world. Reputation is like glass. Once it shatters, you cannot glue it back together. By the next morning, the video of Victor screaming, "I did it so you would learn to submit," had been viewed 3 million times. By noon, the bank that held the note on Jordan Facility Solutions called in their loan. They cited a material adverse change clause in the contract, specifically, the public reputational damage of the CEO. By Wednesday, the partners he had hoped to woo at the gala had issued statements distancing themselves from him. The contract for the tech campus in Boulder went to a competitor. Victor Jordan didn't just lose a deal. He became a pariah. He was radioactive. No one would take his calls. No one would insure his bonds. The empire he had built on intimidation collapsed under the weight of his own public arrogance. 3 weeks later, I was sitting in my new office at Astor Lane. The view of the mountains was spectacular. My phone rang. It was my mother. I stared at the screen for a long time. I could have let it go to voicemail, but I decided to answer, not because I owed her, but because I was no longer afraid of her silence. "Hello, Mother," I said. "Naomi." She wept. Her voice sounded thin, broken. "Oh, Naomi, it is terrible here. The bank is taking the house. Your father, he just sits in the dark. He doesn't speak. Grant has left. He moved in with a friend." "I am sorry to hear that," I said politely. "We need you," she sobbed. "We can fix this. We can be a family again. If you just issue a statement, if you say it was a misunderstanding, maybe the banks will back off. Please, honey, come home. We can start over." I looked at the framed photo of my grandmother I had placed on my desk. "I forgive you, Mom," I said. "I forgive you for standing by while he tried to break me. I forgive you for the silence." "Then come home," she begged. "Forgiveness is not an invitation," I said gently. I am not coming back. I am not fixing his mess. I have my own life now, and for the first time, it actually belongs to me. I hung up the phone. I blocked the number. That afternoon, I drove to the cemetery on the outskirts of Denver. Vivian Caldwell had been buried there, under a simple granite marker. Near the mountains she loved. The wind was blowing, crisp and cold, smelling of pine needles and snow. I knelt on the grass. I placed a bouquet of purple irises, her favorite, against the stone. I touched the cold letters of her name. You were right, I whispered. You told me that one day I would need a key. I thought you meant you would leave me a miracle. I thought you would leave me magic. I smiled, tears pricking my eyes. But you didn't leave magic. Grandma, you left a plan. You left a paper trail. You knew that magic fades, but compound interest and legal documentation last forever. I stood up. I brushed the dirt from the knees of my expensive trousers. I took a deep breath. The wind howled through the valley, but beneath it, I could hear something else. It wasn't the sound of vacuum cleaners. It wasn't the sound of my father's yelling. It wasn't the sound of my own heartbeat fluttering in panic. It was the sound of silence. The silence of a debt paid in full. The silence of a phone that would never ring with a threat again. It was the sound of freedom, and it was the most beautiful music I had ever heard. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from today. Please drop your city or country in the comments below, so we can see how far this story has traveled. If you enjoyed watching justice be served, please make sure to subscribe to the Jane Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and hit that hype button to help us share this journey with even more people.